Shalom, everybody. It's me, Vanessa Malave, and welcome to Moving on Faith, the Book of Esther Bible Study Series. Now, if you are just joining us for the first time, we are actually going to be finishing up today with our Book of Esther Bible study with chapters 9 and 10. And for those of you who've been with us since the very beginning, it has been quite a journey. But I assure you, stay tuned because this last little bit is going to be pretty interesting. Now, again, if this is the first time you're joining us, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it, all that good stuff. And for anyone following along in their Bibles, I am actually using an ESV, English Standard Version, for this Bible study. All right. Now, I like to begin by reading the chapter first, and then we'll get right into it and dissect it. Okay, here we go. Book of Esther, chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's command and edict were about to be carried out, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain the mastery over them, the reverse occurred. The Jews gained mastery over those who hated them. The Jews gathered in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Xerxes to lay hands on those who sought their harm. And no one could stand against them, for the fear had fallen on all peoples. All the officials of the provinces and the satraps and the governors and the royal agents also helped the Jews, for the fear of Mordecai had fallen on them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordecai grew more and more powerful. The Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and did as they pleased to those who hated them. In Susa, the citadel itself, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, and also killed Parshandatha and Dalphon and Aspatha and Poratha and Adalia and Iridatha and Parmatasha and Arisai and Iridai and Vaizatha, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, but they laid no hand on the plunder. That very day, the number of those killed in Susa, the citadel, was reported to the king, and the king said to Queen Esther, in Susa, the citadel, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men, and also the 10 sons of Haman. What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your wish? It shall be granted you. What further is your request? It shall be fulfilled. And Esther said, if it please the king, let the Jews who are in Susa be allowed tomorrow also to do according to this day's edict, and let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows. So the king commanded this to be done. A decree was issued in Susa, and the 10 sons of Haman were hanged. The Jews who were in Susa gathered also on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they killed 300 men in Susa, but they laid no hands on the plunder. Now the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also gathered to defend their lives, and got relief from their enemies, and killed 75,000 of those who hated them, but they laid no hands on the plunder. This was on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day they rested and made that day a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews who were in Susa gathered on the 13th day and on the 14th day, and rested on the 15th day, making that day a feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages who live in the rural towns hold the 14th day of the month Adar as a day for gladness and feasting, as a holiday, and as a day in which they send gifts of food to one another. And Mordecai recorded these things, and sent letters to all the Jews who were in all the provinces of King Xerxes, both near and far, obliging them to keep the 14th day of the month of Adar, and also the 15th day of the same, year by year, as the days on which the Jews got relief from their enemies, and as the month that had been turned for them from sorrow into gladness, and from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and gladness, days for sending gifts of food to one another, and gifts to the poor. So the Jews accepted what they had started to do, and what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast that is, cast lots, to crush and destroy them. But when it came before the king, he gave orders in writing that his evil plan that he had devised against the Jews should return on his own head. And he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Therefore they called these days Purim, after the term Pur. Therefore, because of all that was written in this letter, and of what they had faced in this matter, and of what had happened to them, the Jews firmly obligated themselves and their offspring and all who joined them, that without fail they would keep these 2 days according to what was written, and it was the time appointed every year. And these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, in every clan, province, and city, and that these days of Purim should never fall into the disuse among the Jews, nor should the commemoration of these days cease among their descendants. Then Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew gave full written authority, confirming this second letter about Purim. Letters were sent to all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the king of Xerxes in words of peace and truth, that these days of Purim should be observed as their appointed seasons, as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther obligated them, and as they had obligated themselves and their offspring with regard to their fasts and their lamenting. The command of Esther confirmed these practices of Purim, and it was recorded in writing. Chapter 10. King Xerxes imposed tax on the land and on the coastlands of the sea, and all the acts of his power and might, and all full account of the high honor of Mordecai, to which the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of Chronicles, the book of the Chronicles of the king of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Xerxes, and he was great among the Jews, and popular with the multitude of his brothers, for he sought the welfare of his people, and spoke peace to all his people. Oh, all right, so what a nice happy ending, everybody. Not so happy for some. Okay, let's get right into it. So I think it's important, the first thing to know, it does give you a timestamp, right? So the 12th month of Adar. The 12th month of the Hebrew calendar is actually called Adar. So the Hebrew calendar, alongside the Gregorian calendar, the month of Adar would fall around the month of March. Okay, for those of you who are interested in learning about the calendar, the Hebrew calendar. Now, verse 1. I'll read it really quick. Now, in the 12th month of the month of Adar, the 13th day of the same, the king's command and the edict were about to be carried out. On the very day the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain mastery over them, the reverse occurred. The Jews gained mastery over those who hated them. The Jews gained mastery over those who hated them. So I thought this was interesting because it reminded me of actually King David, who I love. King David, when he destroyed the Amalekites at Ziklag. So really quick, we're going to do a lot of retracing some steps, just to kind of close it out full circle. So really quick, let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 30. And I will encourage you to grab a bookmark because we will be in 1 Samuel quite a bit. And so just to make it easier on yourself. 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 16 through 20. And when he had taken him down, behold, they were spread abroad all over the land, eating and drinking and dancing. Now this is, they're saying what the Amalekites are doing. At this point, the Amalekites had kidnapped the women and children that belonged to David and his army while they were away fighting, and they took all of their things, and they left. So now David and his men have caught up to them, and they're about to surprise them with a butt whooping. All right, and let's keep going. So they were eating and drinking and dancing because of all the great spoil they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. And David struck them down from twilight unto the evening of the next day. He fought them from twilight of one day to evening the next day. So they were like, no sleep, no rest, just fighting continuously. He just like went to work on them. Love King David. Twilight until the evening of the next day, and not a man of them escaped, except for 400 young men, who mounted camels and fled. David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken, and David rescued his 2 wives. Nothing was missing. whether small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything that had been taken. David brought back all. David also captured all the flocks and herds, and the people drove the livestock before him and said, "This is David's spoil." So it says that and back in Esther, it says the Jews gained mastery over their enemies. So this is exactly what happened with the Amalekites and David in Ziklag. He utterly destroyed them. Aside from the 400 that escaped, right? Everyone else died. So that was very interesting. Now, verse 2 of Esther chapter 9. The part that I want to take away is, and no man could stand against them, for the fear of them had fallen on all the peoples. This actually reminded me of the story of Joshua in Jericho and Rahab, the prostitute. Most people are very familiar with this story, so I just really quickly just want to go to it and just read it for a second. For those of you who have never read it, it's very interesting. I mean, what in the Bible isn't interesting, right? So let's go to Joshua chapter 2, verse 11. So Rahab is actually talking to the Israelite spies, okay? And she's letting them know a few things. She says to them, and as soon as we heard it, she's telling them, as soon as we heard you guys were on your way, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth below. Mind you, after what happened in Egypt with the plagues, right, and Exodus, many nations knew and heard what had happened because it was so severe that everyone knew about it, okay? Yah made an example of Egypt. And so the surrounding nations, they knew about it, and they were terrified of Yah. And they certainly didn't want no problems with Israel, because they didn't want what happened to Egypt to happen to them. So like she said, their hearts melted. Like they were deathly afraid, right? Like, oh gosh, what's happening, right? Just like they said in verse 2 of Esther, and no man could stand against them, for the fear of them had fallen on all peoples. Just the fear of the Israelites coming was fighting them had these people scared. Okay, verse 3, I thought it was interesting. It said, all the officials of the provinces and the satraps and the governors and the royal agents also helped the Jews, for the fear of Mordecai had fallen on them. Mind you, these officials, a lot of them were probably Persian. So it's interesting because they are probably at this point going against their own countrymen in order to protect the Jews, right? So it's kind of interesting how that is playing out. I said it before, right? There will be those who will denounce their nations, their own nationalities. They will denounce their own cultures, their own people, in order to align themselves with God's people, Israel, and become one with Israel. So there are people who are going to do that. We know that. Verse 4. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordecai grew more and more powerful. This actually, I'm sure everyone thought about this when they read it. Mordecai went from being a freed slave to the second most powerful man in the Persian Empire. Another example of this is King Joseph, son of Jacob, son of Israel, right? Who was sold into slavery by his brothers, only to eventually rise to power and to authority as the second command in Egypt. He had as much power as the Pharaoh, and mind you, he started off as a slave there, and he Yah exalted him, especially because he has such a humble spirit, and he was such a righteous man. And Joseph, being put in that position, what he did was, he not only saved the Israelites from the famine that was coming, but he saved all the other surrounding nations as well, including the Egyptians. Because mind you, the famine had spread over the land, and because of the wisdom that Yah gave him, he was actually able to not only save his own people, but all of the surrounding nations as well. Okay? Now, and these are just what I like to, note is that for example, the plagues in Egypt, there's no doubt about it. Those are miracles, right? Those are great works that are only constructed by Yah. But it's even the miracles such as someone going from being a slave, even a freed slave, into being someone in power who has as much power as a king, right? That in itself is a miracle, right? Is it not, or is it not? Okay, verse 7. So verse 7 through 10, and so they killed all the sons, right? And they are fighting these people, but they're not taking the plunder, right? And I thought this was very interesting because I asked myself, well, why wouldn't they take the plunder? The people were going to, when the roles were reversed, when the people were planning to kill the Jews, they were also planning to take the plunder as well. But the Jews, the Israelites, were choosing not to plunder them after killing them. So I thought, why, right? I can only surmise this. It's specifically in regard to the sons of Haman, right? So we know that Haman was an Agagite. Agag was a descendant of the Amalekites. Okay, so that's that bloodline. But I want to just dig a little bit deeper. We're going to go back a little bit because I feel like there's history there that unless you are an avid Torah reader, or, you know, if you're not reading so much in the Old Testament, you may miss these things. So it's really important to kind of see how certain things or certain people are connected and why certain things are happening because of what has previously happened. Okay, so let's start off with going to Exodus chapter 17, please. Exodus 17, and I'm going to read verses 8 through 16 here. Okay. Okay, so at this point, if you don't know, the Israelites and the believing Gentiles have fled Egypt. They are in the wilderness with Moses, and they're being led through the wilderness. Okay, and then it reads, verse 8. Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moshe says to Joshua, choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moshe told him and fought with Amalek. While Moshe, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill, whenever Moshe held up his hand, Israel prevailed, and whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moshe's hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, while Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side, so his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moshe, write this as a memorial in the book, and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moshe built an altar and called the name of it, the Lord is my banner, saying, a hand upon the throne of the Lord. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So this is important. There's a couple things here, right? Firstly, this is showing you why the Amalekites and the descendants of the Amalekites are called enemies of the Jews. Okay, this is why it says Haman, the enemy of the Jews. The reason why is because while these people were escaping slavery from Egypt, the Amalekites attacked them. Okay, the women, the children, the elderly, the wounded, the sick, they attacked them when they were not at a time of war, when they were unprepared, when they were exposed. You know, they attacked them. That was shady. And so because they did that, Yah says, forever I will make war with you. Forever. Not only that, what does he say? He will wipe out the name. He will wipe out the name of the Amaleks from under. It says here that I will utterly blot out the memory of an Amalek from under heaven. He's gonna wipe them out forever. This is what he is saying. And when he says it, he means it. He's not joking around. And so that's really important to know where that whole feud kind of comes from. The Amalekites attacked the Israelites at a very, very weak and vulnerable state. Now, it's also important to note that the situation here, when Aaron and her are holding up Moshe's hands, his arms, while he's holding up the staff. So the word faith is actually, the concept of faith is introduced in this scenario here. Faith is that actually, I believe it's, I didn't write this down, but quote me if I'm wrong, imunah. And so in Hebrew, right? And so when the Israelites thought of faith, they thought of this situation right here. Believing in the power of Yah enough to act upon it, right? Moshe believed in Yah's power. He believed that if he held up the staff, that they would win this battle. He believed it, so he did it. Not only that, but Aaron and her believed, so they helped him. It required action to prove that faith, that belief. Okay, so when the Israelites thought of faith, they thought of this specific scenario here, where you believed it enough to take action, okay, to do. Okay, now so that this was the beginning of the whole Amalekite and Israelite eternal feud. Okay, let's really quickly go to 1 Samuel 15. We're going to be there for a little bit, so you can put a bookmark. And we're going to go to chapter 15. And I'm going to start with verses 2 and 3. So in this in this passage here, Saul, Yah's anointed king, okay, Yah is going to give Saul a mission. If y'all don't know Saul, you need to be reading your Bibles. Okay, King Saul was the first king of Israel. Okay, 1 Samuel chapter 15, we're going to start at verse 2. We'll start at verse 1 just to give you context. Verse 1, and I'm going to read down to 3. And Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people, Israel. Now therefore listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came out of Egypt." I told this what I mentioned earlier. We just read it in Exodus. "Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." Yah said, Saul, utterly destroy them, wipe them out. Not only are you supposed to kill all of them, but everything of value that belongs to them, destroy it. All the animals, destroy it. Whatever they have, destroy it. This was the command of Yah. Destroy everything that Amalek had. Destroy Amalek. For those of you who like to think that Yah he's just so nice all the time. He's just so good. Of course he's good. Everything he does is righteous. But know this. Yah is not handing out butterflies and kisses all day. Okay? He was destroying disobedient people, his people that were disobedient, and also these nations that went against his people. If you don't know this, you don't know your God. Okay? Sorry to have to say it like that, but it's true. All right, let's go down really quick he told Saul, destroy them, destroy everything that they have. Okay, I'm telling you to do this. Man, woman, child, baby, kill them all. And destroy everything. Let's go down just a few verses down to 17 in the same chapter. Right? And all right. And this is after Saul went, he did what he did to the Amalekites. Now he has to talk about after. This is after he fought the Amalekites. And Samuel, the prophet, said, He's talking to Saul at this point. He's saying, though you are little in your own eyes, you are not the head of the tribe. Are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go, devote to destruction the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you pounce on the spoil and do what is evil in the sight of the Lord? So Saul did not destroy everything. No, because the people were pressuring him to save a few goats, save a few animals here. We're gonna use them to sacrifice to God, and everything's gonna be good. He's gonna be happy. He's gonna be happy with these sacrifices, right? Not only that, but Saul kept the king, right, alive. King Agag. Okay, he kept him alive. Okay, so this shows you right here, Saul disobeyed Yah. They took the plunder and they kept people alive. So I bring all of this up to say, in my mind, the reason why during this time in Esther, when they are killing their enemies, right, they're destroying their enemies, they are not partaking in the plunder. And I'm thinking that a part of that reason is because of them being of Haman being an Amalekite, right? He was an Agagite who was an Amalekite, being a descendant of that bloodline, and what had happened to Saul previously after having engaged with them in battle and then taking the plunder. Okay, could I be wrong? Absolutely. However, it is something to meditate on, and it is something to pray on and see if the Lord reveals this to you or something different. And if he has revealed something different, or you have a different understanding of this specific scenario, please share with me. You know I love to learn. Please share. Okay, so back to Esther. Verses 11 through 13. The king is asking Esther, he's like, listen, all of this happened, 500 people were killed, like these Israelites are just out here killing people, like, but baby, is there anything else you need? Can I get you anything else, girl? Anything? Let me know what you want and I got you, boo. And she's like, yeah, you know what, let it happen again for another day. Let them continue for one more day, right? So I'm thinking, like, this goes perfectly in line with Yah's promise to make war with them forever. Make war with the Amalekites, hence the Agagites, hence the descendants of Haman, forever, and the enemies of Yah. And it was an example, again, because Yah does not play with his children. Okay, as a mom, I'm going to tell you right now, like, and I'm sure other mothers will agree, if someone was to try to hurt my child, I am going mama bear on you, okay? A mama bear ain't cute and cuddly, okay? And so Yah is very similar as a parent. He's allowed to punish his children, but you best not find yourself trying to attack them for no reason, you know? And so he's going to defend them, and he's going to make an example of them. Okay, and I think that's what was happening here. He was making an example of these people. You're coming against my people. You're trying to make war with them. You're trying to utterly destroy them without mercy and without reason. So now I have to get you. I have to get you. And it has to be worse than what you were going to do to me or to my people. Sorry. This is how I'm thinking. Could I be wrong? Yes, absolutely. I could be wrong. But meditate on it. Verse 19. Therefore, the Jews of the villages who live in the rural towns hold the 14th day of the month of Adar as the day of gladness and feasting, as a holiday, and as a day on which they send gifts of food to one another. So, for those of you who are trying to who are trying to align yourselves with Torah and with the Word, not just the New Testament, but the full book, the full manuscript of the Bible, you are trying to walk, talk, eat, sleep, breathe, and live it. Hallelujah. The holy day or holiday of Purim, it's okay, so it's not a commanded feast day. It is not a holy day that was given to us by Yah. We are not commanded to keep it. It is not a high holy day. There are no statutes that are enforced in it. And so the Feast of Purim is simply a memorial feast. Okay, so if you wanted to keep this feast as a memorial of Yah's victory and conquest and triumph over the enemies of his people, then you could certainly celebrate Purim, which again, it says you celebrate by giving gifts of food to one another and to the poor, gifts to the poor. So what that tells me is on that day, we need to be, if you wanted to celebrate Purim, you don't have to, but if you wanted to, this is the time to go out and feed the hungry, feed the people who need to be fed, okay? Physically and spiritually. Take your Bibles with you, take a plate, and feed them. So again, it's not commanded, but if you wanted to do it, you most certainly can. In the past, we kind of haven't, just because before we had kids, we were able to move around a little bit more freely, and so that was definitely something that we took advantage of. Then we just, as you all know, got 3 babies under 3, so it's a little busy now, and so getting to that type of environment and doing that type of work is a little harder for us now, but we definitely like to donate to organizations that do help with feeding the hungry and helping and ministering to the homeless. So for those of you who are interested in doing that but can't physically do it yourself, there's always that opportunity as well. The whole point is just give to others, right? Now, the last thing, and it says in chapter 10, it talks about all of this is written in the book of the Chronicles of the King of Media and Persia. So the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Media and Persia, obviously it's not a biblical text. This is a historical document that was written during the time of the Persian Empire. Mind you, at this time, the Persian Empire, during the collapse of the Persian Empire, quite a bit of documentation was destroyed, which is normal for ancient civilizations and empires. During the time of their destruction, they will lose a lot of written material, a lot of documented artifacts. So a lot of things are missing. However, snippets here and there of the Book of the Chronicles of the King of Media and Persia is available in PDF form on the internet, and I do believe it's actually available on Amazon as well for anyone who is interested in reading it and just getting a little bit more information and learning a little bit more about this scenario. I myself have not read it. To be honest, not really on my to-read list. It's probably a good read, but I am so consumed with just studying the word. I don't really have time for that. But anyone who does have the time and is interested in learning more about this situation and this story, I definitely encourage you to check it out. If the Holy Spirit leads you there. And if not, don't. I'm not being led there. And so, yeah, it is what it is. Now, in conclusion, because we have gone through 10 chapters of the book of Esther, and there's just so much information that we have taken from it, I am going to sum up just a few tidbits for us, and we're done, guys. Okay, so in conclusion, Esther, or Hadassah, which is her Hebrew name, Hadassah, which means myrtle tree, by the way. Esther, Hadassah, is a true role model for all women who seek after righteousness. Throughout this series, we've seen Esther demonstrate depths of wisdom, humility, problem-solving skills, temperance, self-control, fortitude, endurance, integrity, righteousness, faith, strength, and above all, she demonstrates love. She demonstrates a true love for Yah and for serving him. She demonstrates true love for her people And she also demonstrates love for her father, okay, Mordecai. She loves them so much that she risks her life to save her people. She risks her life to serve Yah in the capacity in which he has chosen for her. And she has risked her life to save her father. She is, ladies and gentlemen, the epitome of a heroine. Wonder Woman, eat your heart out. Like, Esther is a legit hero. Like, she, takes so much courage to do what she did, and only by the grace given by Yah that she was able to do that. And that's amazing. Now, we as believers should seek to be a perfect servant, right? To serve, to be led by Yah, right? We need to be the perfect servant, aim and strive to be a better servant every day, just as Esther was a better servant and a perfected servant, right? We should hold doing what is right, doing the right thing above our own preservation. A lot of people are so afraid of being persecuted, whether physically, emotionally, spiritually, or even socially. That seems to be the biggest one. So many people are afraid of being socially persecuted by their so-called friends and family members, co-workers and colleagues, that they are choosing not to do what is right, not to follow Yah the way he has instructed them to, because they cannot handle the pressure of people persecuting them or separating themselves from them. We need to put serving Yah above our own discomfort, our own wants, desires, and needs, and let him determine our purpose and what is right for us. We as the church should humbly and gladly submit to Yah and Christ our husband, that we may be found pleasing in his sight for the time when he is to come and to collect his bride. We must also be ready and willing to risk our lives to serve and obey Yah, like the prophets, like Esther. So many of us say that we will do anything for Yah. We'll do anything for Christ. But when it comes to something as simple as keeping his feast days, or when it comes to something as simple as not keeping the pagan holidays of the world like Christmas and Halloween and Easter, you buck up. So who are you ready to risk your life for? Because I guarantee you it's not Yah. If you can't give up simple things like that, then how are you going to give up your life for Yah? You're not. Now, we must bring honor to our master. Who is your master? Is Yah your master, or is Satan your master? Because Satan is going to encourage you to live the way that you see fit. He's going to encourage you to chase after your own happiness, your dreams, your aspirations, your goals. Your feelings are important. Your opinions matter, and nothing should stop you from living your best life. That is a doctrine of Satan. Yah, on the other hand, if he is your master, you are not asking Yah, how can you make my life better? You are asking Yah, what can I do to serve you better? That is how you know you are a servant of Yah. We must aim to be an asset to the kingdom, right? Not a stumbling block. What are you doing to call others to the wedding? There is a wedding coming, folks. Christ will return for a bride, and the more people that we can beckon to the wedding to be counted worthy to be a bride for Christ, that is the goal. How many of us are doing that? How many of us are putting forth our time, our energy, our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to pushing the gospel, pushing the word of Christ, that they may be grafted into the marriage and be ready and prepared with their lamps filled with oil, that the King may take them and save them? Are you using your gifts and your talents for him? Or are you being selfish and self-centered and self-serving and only worrying about what you can do for you? We must love Yah more than ourselves, trusting in his promises that he has made to those who are in covenant with him. Make no mistake about it. You do not inherit the blessings of his promises if you are not in covenant with him. Because if you are not in covenant with him, then who are you in covenant with? In closing, ladies, in a world full of vain women who are simply worried about what they look like, how many selfies they can take a day, how good their hair looks on camera, afraid of showing their double chin or looking perfect with a perfect body or getting butt implants and all this other crazy stuff. Those type of women, the women who are focused so much on men and what they can do to men and how they can manipulate men and how they can use their bodies as a weapon. The women who are obnoxious and loud and aggressive, who think that they can emasculate men by simply portraying themselves as a masculine energy, right? These types of women, be set apart from them. Be different. They think that they're different. They are not different. They are simply the mold of what is an abomination. Okay? You want to be set apart. You want to be holy. You want to be different. Be an Esther. Be an Esther. I hope you guys have enjoyed this Bible study. It has been enjoyable for me, and I've learned so much, and I'm so happy and grateful that you had this opportunity. You took this opportunity to learn with me. I literally learned something new every single week. So I hope that I was able to share something new with you. And I thank you so much for those of you who like the videos, have shared it, commented, those of you who have subscribed to my channel. Please continue to stay with us, follow us. That way we can connect more on spiritual level, and we can share some understanding, some knowledge, and some wisdom, and we can grow in Christ. Again, thank you so much. I'm Vanessa Malave, and shalom.